When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
Time travel is really cool, but complicated. The idea of time travel almost seems like a fantastical dream, but there are many concepts revolving around it that are actually rooted in theoretical, well-studied physics. And when dealing with time travel in any capacity, you can't go too long without running into some paradoxes. And Netflix's Dark handles time travel in a way that I personally haven't seen before. When dealing with time travel in any story, it's very difficult to work with without resulting in plot holes and inconsistencies. And the reason for this is because of all these paradoxes that exist around time travel. Dark handles these very well. I'm not saying there are no plot holes in the entire show, but the way it makes use of time travel is very well done, at least when compared to some of the other examples we've seen in media. And despite its science fiction-esque story, there's actually a lot of attention to detail and acceptance of these paradoxes versus just ignoring them. In this video, I'm going to dive into why I think Netflix's Dark did time travel right. But before we dive in, I just want to give you all a warning that there will be some major spoilers for the show. If you haven't watched it, please click away because this is a show definitely worth watching, and it's worth watching without knowing anything going in. If you haven't subscribed to Filmstack yet, hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel out a lot and makes me feel all warm and tingly inside. So with that out of the way, cue the intro. Imagine going back in time before your parents are born and killing your own grandfather. What would be the result of that? It seems pretty obvious. You wouldn't have been born. But if you're not born, then you can't go back in time and kill your own grandfather. Hence, you would be born. This loop can go on forever and ever and is known as the grandfather paradox. One of the main premises of Dark is Jonas or Adam trying to untangle the knot, or in other words, break the repeating cycle that he lives in. But the grandfather paradox won't allow this. There have been a few proposed solutions to this paradox, including multiple dimensions and different timelines and all that, but that's not what the writers decided to do. Yes, there are two dimensions in Dark, but they don't solve the grandfather paradox with this. Both dimensions seem to be stuck in this time loop. Dark makes use of a principle known as the Novikov self-consistency principle, which is intended to solve the problem of paradoxes in time travel. In technical terms, the principle asserts that if an event exists that would cause a paradox or any change to the past whatsoever, then the probability of the event is zero. Therefore, it would be impossible to create time paradoxes. So what does this actually mean? Well, it means that if something already happened in the future, no matter what you do, if you were to travel back to the past, there is zero chance for you to either cause an event or change an event that will result in a different future. With relation to the grandfather paradox, it means that because your grandfather is alive and you were born, if you were to travel back in time, it would be impossible for you to kill your grandfather no matter how hard you tried. In Dark, we see a few characters try to change the future by affecting an event in the past, but failing to do so. One example of this is Ulrich, who tried to kill the young Helge because he thought he had something to do with the disappearance and death of his brother and son. But because Helge already exists in the present and future, Ulrich was not able to kill him in the past. We also saw a more specific example of this with Jonas trying to kill himself. No matter what happens, Jonas cannot die as a young adult because he already exists as Adam in the future. The best example of this is when Jonas tried to kill himself but ended up failing because Hanno came to save him. And then even though he pointed a loaded gun to his head, every time he pulled the trigger, the gun wouldn't fire, almost as if it was jammed. Then the moment Hanno took the gun back and aimed it away from Jonas, the gun worked again. This is exactly what the Novikov self-consistency principle states. There is zero chance that Jonas can kill himself because he already exists in the future. Okay, imagine this. Someone you love died in a car accident. So you work really hard to figure out how to travel back in time and try and stop the car accident from happening. But as you're doing everything you can to try and stop it, you're actually the one who causes the accident. This may seem very similar to the grandfather paradox, but it's a bit different. This is known as the Predestination Paradox. It's also solved by the Novikov self-consistency principle because there is zero chance you can go back in time and change the events that cause something in the future to happen. We see the Predestination Paradox come up in Dark. The best example of this is when Claudia Tiedemann learned about time travel, went to the future, and learned about when and how her father, Egon Tiedemann, would die, which sparked her mission to go back in time and stop it. But then we saw the very sad moment where she was the result of her father's death in his apartment. This paradox paradox is one that comes up time and time again in various forms of media, and for some reason it always leaves me feeling a bit nauseous. So imagine this. You've been doing a lot of reading about Einstein's theory of relativity, and somehow you figured out how to travel back in time. So you go back in time before Einstein thought of the theory and provide it to him. Then time goes on, he publishes his papers, he becomes famous, and you end up reading the theory and decide to go back in time to give it to him. This brings up the question, where did the theory originate? It didn't come from you because you learned it from Einstein, and it didn't come from Einstein because, well, he learned it from you. So who discovered it? This is known as the Bootstrap Paradox, and it doesn't only apply to ideas, it also applies to physical objects and people. And Dark makes extensive use of this paradox. There's actually a huge list of people and items that are created via the Bootstrap Paradox in Dark. I'll link it below if anyone's interested, but I'll name a few notable ones here. In terms of items, we have the time machine in Adam's world. Now try to follow me here. So old Claudia gets the blueprints from the machine from Eve's world and gives them to Tannhaus in Adam's world. Then Tannhaus goes on to use the blueprints to build part of the time machine. Later, the middle-aged version of Jonas shows up with a completed time machine that is broken and gives it to Tannhaus, who then reverse engineers and creates a working time machine. The time machine was able to be completed because of its completed future self. Okay, another example, Elizabeth and Charlotte. Without going into plot details, Charlotte is Elizabeth's mother and Elizabeth is Charlotte's mother. Yes, I know, it's weird, but it's also kind of cool from a plot perspective. They bootstrapped each other. And finally, my favorite example of the Bootstrap Paradox in Dark is the Notebook, or more specifically, the Notebook's contents. The unknown is shown to be the one who gathers all the events and writes them in the notebook. Then throughout the show, many characters eventually find the notebook and based on the info inside of it, act out these events. So because these events happened, the unknown was able to compile them and enter them into the notebook. They bootstrap each other. But anyways, these are the three main paradoxes that come up in Dark, and I'm sure there are more out there as well. The thing that I love about Dark when it comes to time travel is that they don't just use time travel all willy-nilly. They actually put a lot of thought into it and try to abide by some theories and principles. For a science geek like me, that's like a dream come true. If you have any other cool time travel related facts or anything else about Dark, make sure to leave a comment. I'd love to read some cool things. That's all I have for this video. Don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe to Film Stack. And until next time, have a good one.